Our next speaker, the most core area, everybody was talking about the data and how to generate the value from that data. So I would like to call Sir Eraj Mehmood, Head of Data Consultancy System Limited. Please come onto the stage and share your thoughts on how to generate the value from that data. So please come onto the stage. Thank you. Please give a big round of applause. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. So I know we're a bit behind schedule and everyone's waiting for lunch, so I'm trying to keep this very short. We've had some very interesting conversations, and this point, generating value from data, is something that everyone has pretty much touched upon. I would like to go through what kind of value we can derive from data, how we can go about doing that, the journey and the strategy that we need to adapt to go over that strategy, and where we want to end up ideally as an organization that is data driven. So almost all the speakers have spoken about data being the new oil, and I agree with that. And during the last telco panel, one of the respected speakers also mentioned that they would call information the new oil instead of data. So I guess both point of views are correct, and I would want to rephrase it in a way that data is the new oil in a raw form, and to generate any sort of value out of it, we need to mine it, we need to refine it, we need to get it to the end users, we need to transport it there, and we need to get the right data to the right people at the right time. Unless we do that, then we're not really creating any value from data. So what is this value that we talk about? We have a lot of cases where we go to customers or prospect customers, and we have this discussion with the data team and the CDO. They understand the need for a robust data platform that needs to be in place, but they often talk to us about going to their management and trying to convince them regarding the value that can be created from data, and more so the ROI. Now, this is the tricky part. There are some cases on which we can put a dollar value, and they're more direct in the sense that the value being generated can be seen. But there are a lot of cases in which the value to be harnessed is not that direct. So for discussion's sake, I've divided this into two main areas. One is the quantifiable or the direct value. So we have data monetization use cases where we could be providing data sets to internal or external stakeholders and trying to generate some sort of revenue out of it. So this is something that has a quantifiable ROI, but it has some very limited use cases. And like we had a discussion earlier that there are a lot of regulatory issues related to this. So PII or personally identifiable data cannot be shared with third parties. And we can only have use cases where there's aggregated data or we have encrypted data in some form. So those use cases are there, but they're very limited in number. Similarly, we have the targeted campaigns. Campaign management systems are working for most organizations. Those are also something that can be quantified, and especially in telcos. I've worked with a few telcos, and I often hear that there's a huge data analytics department, and there's a small campaign management team within that, but because they're bringing in direct revenue, from the management perspective, the campaign management team is a hero team in a sense that they're bringing in direct, tangible revenue. So once again, the targeted campaigns bit, this is related to only certain number of use cases. But on the other side, when we talk about the indirect value, where there is value being driven and organizations are making, they're improving operational efficiency, they're improving their products, they're improving their outreach, all of these might not be quantifiable directly, but this has a more lasting impact. And the number of use cases that can come under this category, there is no limit to that, right? So we're going to briefly go through a few examples of both. So when we talk about data monetization, there's obviously the very simple and direct data as a service where you provide your data sets to internal and external parties, and you, in a way, selling data. Another way of doing this is the insights as a service. This is where a third party would use the available data. It could be an organization's data clubbed with third-party open data sets. Unfortunately, we have very limited examples of this in Pakistan right now, but this is something that is majorly being used not only in the West, but also in the Middle East, where government organizations have made a lot of data sets public for all organizations to use. So there are a large number of organizations which are taking those third-party data sets, combining them with their own data sets, and creating insights on them. And this can be provided by third parties as a service to your organization, where you don't have to worry about the platform or data management and data governance part of it. So this is one example. Another one is analytics-enabled platform as a service. This is where you run your own data analytics without having to worry about the platform or the infrastructure at the back end, right? So this is where cloud technology enablers mostly come in. And then we have embedded analytics, where you can have certain analytics that you require to be shown in your application or your web front end. And these can be embedded by third parties and can be made visible in your application without having to go through the whole data analytics journey. But once again, these are only limited use cases. Now, if we slightly touch upon the targeted campaigns, so this is something that's very important to a lot of organizations. Telcos certainly are doing a lot in this field, and other organizations have started this journey as well. So the ATL campaigns are only applicable to a certain percentage of the population you're showing it to. So the smarter idea is to save money and go for targeted campaigns and make sure that personalized marketing messages are getting to the right people. That is where your targeted campaigns come in, and this could be on social media, via messages, etc. So you can send the right message to the right audience instead of spending a large budget on ATL campaigns where the outcome might not be as good. Similarly, for omni-channel marketing, your customer data is extremely important, where you need to know your customer preferences and the customer behavior. And based on that, you can reach out to the customer through multiple channels, and you can use the channels that are preferred by that customer and also have a uniform single message across all channels to the same customer set. The last one is related to prediction modeling a bit. So this is where behavior prediction comes in, and this can be incorporated as well for targeted marketing campaigns, where a customer's behavior can be predicted based on their history and their usage of the product in the past. So based on that, the uptake rates go really high because the customer's behavior was already predicted by models. And when those customers were provided with the offer that is of interest to them, then the conversion rate is really high. So just to go through these as use cases that have a direct revenue, these are easier to sell to the higher management, and these always will be there. But what we need to talk about is the whole universe that there is apart from these use cases, where we have no boundaries as to what analytics can provide us. So I'll start with the most common data sets that are used for most businesses. We have the supply chain data for supply chain analytics. We have the financial analytics data, customer data, where we create something like a customer 360. This, I believe, is very, very important to each and every business, that they need to know their customer, and once you know your customer, you can obviously target them better, and you can give them a better customer experience. And spend data, product data, employee data, all of these are some very basic examples of the important data sets that that are used by most businesses. Now, what can you get out of it? So you can improve your operational efficiency, you can predict your customer behavior, obviously you need to know your customer better first. Then you can drive all sorts of actionable insights, be it some operational reporting or some audit data, or you can have C-level dashboards that are provided in real time, showing the important KPIs, and you can have your own business trends as well as the market trends based on the data you have on your competitors or the overall market. Anomaly detection is one thing that can raise alarms and triggers in real time. So any issue that comes can be rectified as early as possible. And then you have competition comparison. This is something that is going on right now. It's just that the data being shared across businesses is very limited. But there was a discussion earlier on, I believe, regarding telcos sharing data with each other. I entirely agree with this point. Obviously, there is some personal information that cannot be shared, or some call record data, etc. But there is certainly data that can be shared, because it's a bit like when consumer data is not being shared willingly, it is shared some way or the other. So even right now, most businesses in the industry have insights on their competition. They have some of their data. That might be partial, might not be complete. But some data is being leaked here and there. So it would be better to actually have some sort of framework in place where this data can be shared across industry, and it can be regularized. So using these, the sky is the limit in terms of use cases. I won't go into examples of use cases like supply chain use cases or trend prediction or anything, because those are very common, and that would take a long time. I initially had some in mind, but in the interest of time, I've decided to not go over those. But an important part is talking about the journey. So when we talk about data strategy and the journey that we have to take, a lot of organizations in our market are at the beginning of this journey. So in terms of maturity level of data analytics, a lot of organizations are at the starting points of like level 1 or level 2. So there are a few things that we need to consider when we take that journey, regardless of where we are in that journey. So just a few talking points here. First one is the Big Bang versus phased approach. So conventionally, most organizations went with the Big Bang approach when it came to data analytics enablement. While taking this journey, they realized that this is a long process, and it would take 2 years or 3 years to have a central data repository in place, have all the sources integrated, data coming in, data cleansed and transformed, and keeping that in a certain data model, and then based on that, having your semantic layer and your reporting on the BI tool with your reports and dashboards, and actually generating value at the end of this journey. So the idea is not to wait for that end point where you reach that point where you can have all your reporting needs met, because frankly speaking, that point where you say that all data is now available and all reporting needs are met, that point will never come. It's a continuous journey. So a phased wise approach where you start with perhaps a few sources, and you perhaps answer a few business questions to start with, that's a very good starting point. And you can evolve from there, and while evolving, you can have your more complex needs met, and you can move towards predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics eventually. Then there's the old discussion of who the owner of data should be and who should drive the strategy. Obviously, I think this is something that's been very well covered in today's discussions. Business obviously is the owner of data, and IT or technology is the custodian of data. So neither one of these two parties can drive data strategy alone. It has to be done in collaboration, where the business requirements or the use cases need to come from business, and the data strategy needs to be driven by the CDO in a way that all the business pain points are answered. Then regarding data literacy program, we talk about this a lot, but generally an issue with this is that most organizations tend to go for a one-size-fits-all approach in data literacy. This should not be the approach. So there will be business stakeholders which will have very limited business requirements when it comes to data analytics, and there will be departments or teams that have very extensive requirements of business analytics, and they have AI ML models that need to run, and they have predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics, and their requirements never end. So we need to identify what kind of needs each stakeholder has, and we need to plan for their data literacy program accordingly. Then availability and access of data, once again, this has been, I think, talked about all day. We need to make sure that the right data is provided to the right people at the right time. So if you're not sharing the right data or not sharing the accurate data, then there is no point. Or if it's not getting to the right people who need to make data-driven decisions, then that is also pointless. And most importantly, if it's not made available in time, then it loses value as well. So availability needs to be ensured in time to the right people, and that would drive value. So the last point here is more of a mindset. So in this whole debate, we believe that data should be treated as a product. And once we start doing that, once we start treating our organization's data as a product, and we start treating our business stakeholders as our customers, that's where the mindset changes. So in that sense, you'd be listening to your customer, which are the business stakeholders. You'd be trying to give them a very good customer experience, and you'd want to answer all their questions. You'd want to improve your product, which is the data. So if that is the mindset of the custodians of data, then obviously maximum value can be driven out of your data from the organization. All right, so once again, this is the data analytics maturity model that we often talk about, and I believe each organization, first of all, needs to evaluate themselves, and they need to know where they are in this maturity model. So if there is no data management platform in place, and there's data in silos or in operational systems, we can, I guess, call it level 0 to level 1. There are a lot of organizations in our market that are at this level, and if you ask me frankly, most organizations are somewhere between level 1 and level 2. So in level 1, we have our data available, and we can do some very basic reporting. This might be operational reporting and might even be happening for the operational systems. Or you might have something like data marts or a central data repository, and you're just able to answer basic questions like what happened. So this is a starting point where we can have our descriptive analytics. But the point is that just because an organization is at level 1 or level 2 does not mean that they cannot harness value from data. They just need to make sure that they're harnessing whatever is possible at that maturity level. So once an organization moves to level 2 where they can run diagnostic analytics, they can have more answers as to why what happened. So the journey continues, and they can move from there to level 3 when they can incorporate AI ML use cases, and they can have their models that can be trained, and you can predict what will happen next. So based on customer behavior, etc., you can have your models, and you can do use cases like churn prediction or the next best offer. And from there on, you can move towards prescriptive analytics, which is, I believe, in our market, the highest point that most organizations generally aim for or should aim for, because that's where you can run your hypothesis, and you can have cases like, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? Or what sort of an action is required to have a certain effect or a certain change? So I believe in our market, this is a level, if any organization has achieved level 4, they should be very proud of it. Because level 5, the cognitive analytics is not exactly relevant for most organizations throughout the world. It's only organizations like perhaps Google or Meta or IBM Watson is using this. So I believe right now we don't need to worry about this level in our market. But the bottom line here being that no matter which level of maturity an organization is in terms of data analytics, they need to ensure that they're harvesting the relative value in terms of that stage or that level. As long as we're doing that, I believe that the management can see the value out of this data. And lastly, there was a point in one of the, I believe, the telco discussion, whether data is the new oil or not. So one of my respected colleagues here said that data is not the new oil, perhaps information is the new oil. I would kind of rephrase it a bit differently in a way that data is the new oil, but obviously it's raw, and it needs to be mined, it needs to be refined. So we can agree that it is the new oil, but I guess the end product would be your high octane or your petrol and diesel, whoever wants what they want, and getting it to the right people. As long as we're doing that, we're harnessing value here. Thank you so much.